His bike flew into the air, his brother froze on the grid. And what happened next left the entire MotoGP world speechless. Picture this. Barcelona. The sun is blazing. 70,000 fans are on their feet. The race has barely started. And then, a bike goes airborne. Not a small tumble, not a slide. A full, violent, terrifying launch into the air. The crowd falls silent. The race stops. Red flags wave. And somewhere on that same grid, Marc Márquez, the greatest rider of his generation, watches his little brother lying on the asphalt. What you're about to see, what really happened in those next few hours. And the one detail about Marc's reaction that nobody is talking about. Stay with me, because this is not just a crash story. This is a story about two brothers, one family, and the price of chasing greatness. Welcome back. If you're new here, this channel covers MotoGP with depth, with passion, and with honesty. And today we're covering one of the most frightening moments this sport has seen in recent years. We're talking about the Catalan Grand Prix, Barcelona, one of the most iconic circuits on the MotoGP calendar. A track known for its fast corners, its unpredictable weather, and its ability to produce some of the most dramatic racing in the world. But nobody expected the drama that unfolded on race day. Now, before we get into the crash itself, let me give you a bit of context. Because this story is not just about one rider, it's about a family. The Marquez family from Sevilla, Spain has given MotoGP two of its most exciting, most courageous, and most fearless riders. Marc Márquez. 8-time world champion. A name that needs no introduction. And Álex Márquez. His younger brother, currently riding for the Gresini Ducati team. A fast, aggressive, technically gifted rider who has spent years proving he belongs at the top level of this sport. The two brothers have raced against each other, celebrated together, and suffered together. And at Barcelona, they would suffer together again, in the most public, most painful way possible. And trust me, Marc's reaction in the moments after the crash is coming up, and it will hit you harder than you expect. Race morning at Barcelona is always electric. The paddock is buzzing. Crews are making final setup tweaks. Riders are in their zones, focused, quiet, locked in. Álex Márquez had shown solid pace all weekend. The Gresini Ducati was behaving well. He was confident, and when the lights went out, he was pushing hard exactly as he always does. Then it happened. At high speed, we're talking well over 200 kilometers per hour. Something went wrong, whether it was a mechanical issue, a contact, a sudden loss of grip. In those fractions of a second, it doesn't matter. The bike got away from him, and instead of sliding, as crashes in MotoGP so often do, the machine launched. It went airborne. The footage is almost impossible to watch. The bike flipping end over end, Álex separating from the machine, sliding across the tarmac, hitting the barriers. Parts of the motorcycle scattered across the circuit. Race control had no choice. Red flags immediately. The race was stopped. I want you to imagine what that moment is like for everyone around. For his team. They're watching on monitors, and the signal cuts to the medical team rushing to the scene. For the fans, 70,000 people holding their breath. And for Marc Márquez, who was out there on that same track, he would have felt it, seen it, known instantly. That was his brother. We're going to talk about Marc's reaction in just a moment, and I have to warn you, it's one of the most human things you will ever see from a professional athlete. Don't go anywhere. In the immediate aftermath, the medical teams were on scene within seconds. That's one thing MotoGP does incredibly well. The safety response time is extraordinary. Álex was conscious. That was the first piece of news that filtered through. And for anyone watching, it was a relief that is genuinely hard to put into words. But conscious does not mean uninjured. Initial reports confirmed that Álex had sustained significant injuries in the crash. A fracture to the neck vertebra. Those 4 words, neck vertebra fracture, are among the most frightening in motorsport. In a sport where riders push the absolute limits of physics, neck injuries carry a weight that's hard to overstate. The spine is everything. Mobility, sensation, life quality. All of it runs through those bones and the spinal cord within them. The second injury, confirmed, was a collarbone fracture. Now, collarbone fractures are unfortunately somewhat common in motorcycle racing. Riders call it the racing injury, MORM, but combined with a cervical fracture, The situation was serious. Álex was taken to hospital immediately. The team, the family, the entire MotoGP paddock waited. Hours passed, and then the news that brought an enormous wave of relief. Álex Márquez had been discharged from hospital. He was out, he was walking, he was going home. The injuries, while serious, had not caused spinal cord damage. He was, by every measure that truly matters, okay. Social media erupted with messages of support. Riders, former champions, fans from around the world, all of them sending the same message. We're with you, Álex. But here's what I want to get into now, because this is the part of the story that reveals something profound about the Márquez family. Something about Marc that the cameras caught, that fans shared millions of times, and that even people who don't follow MotoGP have been talking about. There are two versions of Marc Márquez that exist in the public consciousness. To him, there is Marc the competitor, 8 world titles, the ferocity, the absolute refusal to accept defeat, the man who once raced with a broken arm, the man who came back from a career-threatening injury that kept him out of racing for nearly 2 years. We know that Marc, we've seen that Marc. But in Barcelona after that crash we saw the other Marc, the brother. Eyewitnesses and footage shared across social media showed Marc in the paddock, in moments that were clearly personal, clearly raw. The composed, controlled face that he normally presents to the world was gone. In its place, concern, fear, the kind of vulnerability that you don't plan for, that you can't rehearse. He wasn't the 8-time champion in those moments. He was a big brother. And the reaction from fans globally, across Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, was unanimous. This is why we love this sport. Not just the racing, the humanity behind it. Marc's public statements following the incident were measured, as you'd expect. But even through the careful wording, the emotion was unmistakable. He expressed his relief that Álex was going to recover. He acknowledged how frightening the crash had been, and in that careful, controlled way of his, he let the world see that beneath the helmet, beneath the trophies and the records and the legend, there is just a young man from Severa who loves his little brother. That moment went everywhere. And it should, because in a sport that is sometimes criticised for being too corporate, too calculated, too managed, moments of genuine human emotion are precious. This was one of them. Now, here's where the story takes another turn, because Marc Márquez isn't just in the headlines because of his brother. He's been making his own comeback, and the news coming out about him in the same week. Almost too much to process. Stay with me. To understand what Marc Márquez has been going through, you need to understand just how dramatic his recent history has been. It started in 2020, the Jerez crash, a brutal, high-speed fall that broke his arm. He tried to rush back, had surgery, had more surgery, then more complications. What followed was close to 2 years of almost total absence from racing, multiple operations on his right arm, questions about nerve damage, questions about whether he would ever be the same rider again. For a man who had dominated the sport the way Marc Márquez had, this was almost unimaginable. The doubts crept in, not just from commentators and analysts, but, he has admitted, from within himself. Then came the decision that shook the paddock. Marc Márquez left Honda, the manufacturer he had spent his entire Premier Class career with, the team that had given him 6 of his 8 world titles. He joined Ducati, first with Gresini, the same team his brother races for. Then, the move to the factory Ducati squad. On paper, it made sense. Ducati had the best bike on the grid, but these things are never just about hardware. It was a statement, a declaration. I'm not finished. Not even close. But even this return to form has not been without setbacks. In the same period leading up to the Catalan GP, Marc had been managing injuries of his own. Shoulder issues, a foot injury, more surgeries. The carousel of pain that top-level motorsport athletes endure, and that most of us, watching from our sofas, will never truly comprehend. Yet through all of it, he kept racing, kept competing, kept pushing. And that brings us to a separate piece of news that has been circulating in the same week as his brother's crash. Mugello, the Italian Grand Prix. Rumours, then confirmed reports, of Marc Márquez's return to competitive racing. A comeback after injury. Again. Because of course it is. Because this is Marc Márquez. And when you think about the emotional weight of that, returning to racing, knowing your brother has just been through what Álex went through, it tells you everything about the character of this man. But here's the question I want to ask. And I think it's one that deserves a serious answer. Is this relentless attitude an inspiration? Or is it actually a warning? The answer might surprise you. And it's coming right up. MotoGP is, by most reasonable measures, the most physically dangerous major motorsport in the world. Riders travel at over 350 kilometers per hour. They break from those speeds in a fraction of a second. They lean at angles that defy intuition. And they do it week after week, year after year. The safety improvements of recent decades have been transformational. Airbag suits, better barriers, improved medical response, ongoing research into new protection systems. But safety improvements, no matter how sophisticated, cannot eliminate risk entirely. This sport remains dangerous. Álex Márquez's crash is proof. What is perhaps less discussed, and what I think deserves more attention, is the psychological dimension. How do you get back on a motorcycle after a crash like that? How does Marc Márquez keep returning after injury? How does Álex Márquez, now recovering at home with a fractured neck, vertebra and collarbone, process what happened? And then, when he's medically cleared, how does he face that feeling again? Sports psychologists will tell you about compartmentalization, about the way elite athletes separate the memory of a crash from the act of riding. But I think, speaking honestly, it's more than technique. It's something deeper, a relationship with risk that most of us simply don't have, a conversation with fear that has been going on since childhood. For riders like Marc and Álex Márquez, speed is not a thrill. It is a language. And there's one more layer here that I find genuinely fascinating. How do you share that language with your sibling? How do you watch the person you grew up with, the person you taught to ride? How do you watch them at 200 plus kilometers per hour, knowing exactly what can go wrong? We got a glimpse of the answer in Barcelona. You don't. You can't fully prepare for it. You just love them and hope. And on that note, I want to share something that was reported from close to the Marquez family in the aftermath. It's short, but it perfectly captures this entire story. Coming up in 60 seconds, let's bring it to the present day. Álex Márquez is home. He has been discharged from hospital. Given the severity of what could have been, that alone is extraordinary news. He will need time. The neck vertebra fracture alone demands careful, monitored rehabilitation. MotoGP teams and medical staff work with some of the best specialists in sports medicine in the world. Álex will have access to the very best care, but timelines for his return remain unclear, and there should be no rush. Health first, racing second. Always. The Gresini racing team, a family team in every sense of the word, released statements of support and relief. In MotoGP's paddock, for all of its competitive intensity, there is a genuine sense of community that emerges in moments like these. Rival teams sending messages, rival riders posting support. Because at the end of the day, they all know. They've all had moments where everything nearly went wrong. Marc Márquez, meanwhile, continues his own recovery and preparation for upcoming races. The Mugello comeback narrative continues to build. He is, in many ways, racing for two right now, carrying the weight of his own ambitions and the emotional weight of his brother's situation simultaneously. That is an enormous burden. And yet, knowing what we know about Marc Márquez, there is very little doubt that he will carry it. I want to end this video with something a little different, something personal. And I think it's the most important part of everything we've discussed today. Don't click away. You'll want to hear this. I've been covering MotoGP for a long time. I've watched incredible races, witnessed miraculous saves, celebrated championships and mourned tragedies. And the question I always come back to, the question that I think every honest fan has to sit with, is this. Is it worth it? Is the sport worth the risk? Is the pursuit of greatness worth the cost? The injuries, the fear, the moments when your brother crashes at 200 kilometers per hour and you can do nothing but wait. I don't have a clean answer, but I think the Marquez brothers, in the way they've lived their lives, in the choices they continue to make, they've answered it for themselves. For them, Yes, it is. And the rest of us, we are privileged to watch. In the aftermath of the crash, it was reported that someone close to the Marquez family offered a simple reflection. He is alive. He will ride again. Everything else can wait. 3 sentences. No drama, no overstatement. Just the quiet clarity of people who have lived their whole lives on the edge of something enormous, and who understand, more than any of us, what truly matters. If this video moved you, if it made you think, if it gave you something beyond just the news, please like it, share it. Leave a comment below with your thoughts on everything we've discussed today. And if you're new here, subscribe. We cover stories like this with depth, with care, and with respect for the riders who make this sport what it is. Álex Márquez, we're with you. Get well soon. Marc Márquez, the Reclongstone Mulros. The world is watching, and somehow we already know how this chapter ends. Until the next one, stay passionate, stay safe, and we'll see you on the other side of the red flag. Take care.